You always have that little carrot at the end of the stick that you're always chasing, right? Like that next thing, but not letting it consume you so much that you're never happy either, right? Because you got to find joy and happiness in what you do, otherwise there's no reason in doing it. And so, but you also don't want to ever be satisfied with where you're at, to where it's like you just end up becoming complacent, right?
Yeah.
Because complacency is gonna, I mean, for me, it's like complacency ends up ruining business.
Yeah.
So
there's that fine line between being complacent, which is happy with where you're at, but also not having any ambition towards anything else. And you got contentment, which is happy where I'm at, but I want to go somewhere else. So you want them to be content. And I like what you said. You said happy but not satisfied. So I think that's
but never satisfied.
That's what contentment truly is. It's like I'm happy with where it is, but I know there's more. Or complacency is happy with what is, or maybe I'm not. But either way, I got nothing. I'm not aiming for anything else.
Yeah.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
Well, welcome back to The Root of All Success. We're on location here in Lincoln, California, just north of Sacramento. We got an amazing guest today. We're in a new location. If you've been watching these in order as they've been released, you've seen that we've been on location here in California for the last few episodes, and we got more to go. We got a couple of more amazing episodes today, amazing guests that we're recording right here at this location, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we're moving on down to San Diego for the latter part of the week. And so all these episodes are going to be coming out in sequential order. So you'll get to see what we're doing with The Root of All Success on location, our podcast tour 2021 here in California. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and I want to thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast on whatever podcast player that you listen to this on, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if it's not too much trouble, I would certainly appreciate it if you would go leave a 5-star review. Right now, as of the recording, all our reviews on iTunes are 5 stars, but we would love to have more. So if you can stop and hit the pause button, go into iTunes and leave a 5-star review, I'd appreciate that. And furthermore, if you don't watch these on YouTube, you're missing out. Like, not only do you get to see my ugly mug, but you get to see the beautiful faces of all the people that I get to interview here on the show. But not only that, this is the location we're in today is phenomenal. We're actually at Oliver's Brewhouse and Grill in downtown Lincoln, California, and I'd never been here before. When we walked in, Matt, my apprentice, and I kind of came in on Sunday before we were going to start recording, and we were blown away. We normally record these, for those of you that listen to a lot of this, at the Standard in Nashville. And this place has a lot of the same vibe as the Standard. This is a 175-year-old building. They've got some private areas upstairs that you can rent out. They've got a ballroom. They've got lots of cool bars. They've got a restaurant here, all at Oliver's Brewhouse and Grill. And if you're in Lincoln, California, I want you to come out and check these guys out. Matthew Oliver is the owner and proprietor. And a big shout out and thank you to Matthew and his team for letting us be here on location to shoot this at Oliver's Brewhouse and Grill in Lincoln, California. Let me also thank Nurture for sponsoring this episode today. So our episode sponsor for today is nurture360.com/root. That's NERCHER 360.com/root. Nurture360.com/root. If you've experienced what I've experienced as a small business owner, you know, there's tons of little things that you have to manage on a daily basis that you need reports on, whether it's a P&L and a balance sheet for the financial side, or you need an inventory control report, or you need to know where how your salespeople are doing with new opportunities and following things through the pipeline so that you ultimately make revenue. But the problem is, in the past and up to this day, and even you're probably dealing with this right now, is that the CRMs that you're using, plus your QuickBooks or whatever you're using, Oracle services to get all that data, is all in different places, and you have to get all these reports put together to get you what you need. And it's frustrating. I know that one of the companies that I own, one of the ways that we kept up with all of our sales is we had a CRM, but then there was a project management software that we had that was separate from that, and then we had an Excel sheet that was separate from that on keeping up with our pipeline, like percentages of how we closed from prospecting to pitches to deals, et cetera. And then we had our QuickBooks. Like everything was in separate places. Well, that is until we put Nurture 360 into place. Nurture 360 is a fantastic all-in-one tool that helps you see, as the owner, everything you need to see in one dashboard. And when I implemented it, my team was at first skeptical, like they all are with new software, but once they saw the power behind it and what it does, they were blown away, and we put it in place, and we love it. And I want you to take a chance at looking at this too. They've got a great opportunity for you to switch over, and they actually make it seamless. The switching from one CRM to another, I know can be hard, but they make it seamless. There's no bells and whistles that you don't need with the Nurture software. So go to Nurture, that's N-E-R-C-H-E-R, 360.com/root, as in root of all success, for a special discount so that you can see exactly what Nurture can do for you and your company. Thank you to Nurture, Jake Milner, the owner, and all the team out there for sponsoring today's episode. Now, all that out of the way, it's time to focus on this guy sitting across from me right now. He's off camera right now, but you're about to meet him in just a second. This guy spent 11 years in sales and marketing, where he was working with people like the Oakland A's, Seattle Mariners, Pizza Hut, Granite Construction, Volunteers of America, and more, where he was the master behind the sales and marketing efforts for those organizations. And his knowledge in the field of technology gave him the tools to start up a sales and consulting firm offering telecommunications services, phone systems all across California. And then today, he actually is the owner of the Blake Charles Salon that has locations both in San Francisco and Granite Bay, California. And I was introduced to this guy through a former guest of the podcast, so I am so happy to welcome to the show today, Mr. Blake McCall. Blake?
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm really excited and really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and you don't live too far from this location, right?
I don't, no. So I'm probably about a 30-minute drive to here, so this is super convenient for me. But yeah, no, thanks again. And I think I would have rather been in San Diego or Nashville, but we'll take this. This is easy.
Well, listen, we can do a follow-up, like Where Are They Now episode
Yeah.
in Nashville at some
Perfect.
point in the future when you get your salons, continue to grow and build those up, and
Yeah.
and you can come and talk about it again when you come to Nashville.
Sounds great.
So the salon industry is kind of a unique thing, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when we first were introduced and we talked a little bit about it, that it wasn't in the center of what it is that you knew how to do, but it was
No.
an opportunity that you took.
Yeah.
So I want to get into that, but before we do that,
Yeah.
like it was really based on your ability to sell. Like
Yeah.
you've been a master salesperson for a long time. How did you get involved in sales?
So, growing up, people had always told me that you should get into sales, you should get into sales, you should get into sales. So whether it was the local See's candy drive or selling things door to door, I actually enjoyed just knocking on the neighbors' doors and asking them to buy candy bars for the local school fundraiser or my baseball team or soccer team or whatever. So I thought it was fun and enjoyed it, and ultimately it ended up being what I ended up doing for quite a few years.
So who did you study the most in sales? Was like a couple of gurus that you read their books and went to their stuff? Like, was there anybody?
Not necessarily. My dad, when I was, I think, 16, bought me the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki and made me read it. But honestly, I think I was very fortunate to, when I first got into sales, I had a really good mentor, someone who just kind of taught me the ropes and showed me the way when it came to sales. So I think that was the main thing for me, was just having a positive mentor who really made an impact on me on how to sell moving forward.
Is that person still around?
Yeah, person's still around.
Do
So.
you have conversations with him? Is it him? I assume.
Yeah.
Do you have conversations with him about your life now? What's going on with your?
I do. It's funny because I'm in such a different world now that it's more just how are things going rather than because I'm not really selling things so much anymore as I am just trying to build, right? And there is some comparisons there, but just catching up on life and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I know that in my story, and I know in the stories of dozens and maybe hundreds of other people that are listening to this episode, is that your ability to succeed as an entrepreneur has a lot to do with your ability to sell.
Yeah.
And so my story, just like yours as an entrepreneur, goes back to if I didn't know how to sell, probably not any way I would have ever succeeded.
Yeah.
But it's not everybody's key, but it's a big part of the story. So the fact that you knew how to sell led you to be able to work with people like Pizza Hut and Oakland A's and Seattle Mariners. How did you get involved with those companies?
Yeah, so back in 2006, I moved back from San Diego and moved here to Sacramento, and I decided to take a job with a sports and entertainment marketing company here in Sacramento, and grew relatively quickly, got promoted a couple times within literally a month and a half, and ended up getting invited to open up an office in Portland, Oregon. And so in Portland, we had to go out, not only find the companies that would work with us, but ultimately train people to then go literally just door to door, knocking on doors until 8 p.m. at night, selling packages. So we signed up the Seattle Mariners, Pizza Hut, Papa John's Pizza, Granite Construction, a local movie theater chain up there, and a variety of other places. And quickly grew to #1 in the company out of 10,000 people. We had the #1 sales team up there, sales average per day, and then revenue coming in per salesperson up there. So everybody was making pretty good money up there doing it. So I did that for 9 months, and ultimately ended up moving back to Sacramento shortly after that. So.
And then you got in the telecommunications space. How did
So at that point I came back, and this is when I started to work for a company called Caltronics, so selling copiers. So I was selling copy machines, again, door to door, knocking on doors, just trying to find someone who's looking for a copy machine, which most people buy every 3 to 5 years. I'd say the average is about 4 years. So going out and finding the companies who, one, need a copier, and then two, if they're in the market. So, I mean, you'd see 100 people until minimum before you'd find someone who maybe was buying a copier in the next 6 months, right? So, I mean, it's a lot of knocking on doors in order to find just an opportunity.
So you've got the experience of knocking on residential doors, selling packages for all
Yeah.
those companies you mentioned a moment ago.
Yep.
And then when you got with is it Caltronics?
Caltronics,
When you
yeah.
got with Caltronics, you're selling copiers.
Yeah.
But again, door to door, but it's now business doors.
Yeah.
If you could only choose one door to knock on the rest of your life, if you had to go back into sales,
Oh,
would it be
God.
residential doors or commercial doors?
I think commercial doors, because I think I related on a different level to business people, I think, than I did, because I grew up around entrepreneurs as well. So, I mean, I watched my mom grow a business from, shortly out of a divorce, ended up getting remarried, and I watched her while raising my little brother and I build a successful business from home while making sure breakfast was made, lunch, dinner, picking us up from school, dropping us off at sports, president of the Little League, like kind of ultimate mom, right? And so to watch her kind of go from, we were kind of dirt poor when I was little, to build a successful business, it was just something I related to later in life. So when I'd meet people who had similar stories or whatever, it was just relatable to me. And I think I connected to business owners on a different level. So it was fun for me.
Well, I didn't know the part about your mom. So what business does she have?
So my mom at 16 started working in law offices, and that's been her career ever since. So I think it's over 40 years working in law firms. And so when I was probably 8 years old or so, 9 years old, she started a company called Legal Administrative Services from home, just doing all the bookkeeping, accounting, office management, and that kind of just slowly led to multiple things like marketing and HR, and kind of doing those things for small law firms throughout Sacramento.
So she built kind of a virtual assistant for the law firm industry. Is that kind
somewhat,
of what
yeah. But they're typically on site, maybe 1 to 2 days a week, and then most of the work's being done remotely. So.
And does your mom still have that company today?
Yeah, she's retiring the end of this year. So.
Now, what does retiring for her mean? Is she selling the company, or is she just kind of, what is she doing with
So
that?
she sold it to an employee of hers who's been working with her for years. So they worked out a deal that kind of works out for both of them and allows Amy, who's been there for as long as I've known, really, to continue on with the company moving forward. So
Wow, that's
yeah.
awesome. So your mom, as a single mom, was able to do that and persevere and build that. And unbeknownst to her and to you, it had a major influence on your life moving forward.
Yeah, it did. And my dad is a landscaper, literally still mows lawns to this day. So I think that just the combination of work ethic between the two, my dad was kind of didn't even finish high school. With the family he was raised in, I mean, it was most of the kids didn't finish high school. It was kind of a single mom situation for a large portion of their life, with 8 kids. So it's hard to raise 8 kids as a single mom, right? And so dad was in and out of prison, running from the police, and they had moved cities, jumping city after city because they were on the run, and then dad ended up out of the picture. So my dad, all he knew as he got older was just work ethic, right, and hard work. And so I watched him go from servicing heavy equipment when I was a little kid, coming home late at night, and then ultimately after the divorce he started just mowing lawns. And I remember being out there with him, just literally passing out flyers door to door. Like I was, I think, maybe 7 years old, and I was out handing out flyers to and just putting them on front doorsteps if people weren't home. For my dad's McCall's Landscaping and Maintenance, just literally just helping them just go house to house.
And is he
business.
in this area doing that now?
He is, yeah. So he's all in an area called Folsom, kind of Granite Bay, El Dorado Hills. His whole concept was, look, you can make good money doing whatever it is if you do it right. And so he has very little drive time between jobs. I mean, he can park in one location and knock out 10 jobs.
That's the secret.
From one location,
yeah,
right?
Landscaping, that's the secret.
Yeah, so.
You got to stop loading and unloading. Just unload one time and do every yard
Exactly.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so when you can literally edge all 10 yards, mow all 10 yards, and then blow off all 10 yards, right? I mean, you can do fairly well, just one and after another.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have one sibling, yeah.
Brother?
A little brother.
Little brother.
Yeah.
And so is your little brother involved in any entrepreneurial pursuits?
So he's finishing up law school right now. So following more mom and then stepdad, who was my stepdad, his biological dad, who's now a judge, was a lawyer as well, and also strong work ethic. He'd coach Little League for me, and then when we'd fall asleep, he'd work on his cases and stuff. So I kind of got it from all 3 parents, right? Like just that work ethic and discipline and all that.
So how did you move from selling copiers to owning salons? Like what that is. Like that's not, like your whole career is door-to-door sales, whether it's residential, selling landscaping as a kid, selling residential stuff packages, selling copiers, and okay, I'm gonna open salons. How in the world did that happen?
So if you would have asked me I've been in the salon industry now a little over 3.5 years ago. So I mean, we're talking 41, 42 months. If you would have asked me 42 months and a week ago, that I would have been in this industry, I would have told you were crazy. And it was not on my radar. It's not something I thought I would ever be doing in life. So about a little over that 3.5 years ago, close to 4 years ago, sales was all I knew. Most of that sales was selling things that people needed. They didn't necessarily want to have to buy. It's fun going out and buying a car, right? It's fun buying watches or different things that you want in life. When you have to buy something that you don't really want to have, it's more of a necessity, and the only time you hear from the client is if the copier is jamming or there's a problem necessarily or whatever. I wanted to be in a business and an industry where people were excited to be there and they were happy to leave, right? And you could provide an experience overall that kind of impacted people, that they left in just a great mood, right? And happy about the experience you just provided for them. So I had looked at a couple different business opportunities. I looked at a startup that I actually literally had a deal on the table with them and signed a deal and said started noticing some red flags and thought, you know what, I don't know if this is for me. And so I put a 60-day clause in there that I could back out. It only took me 2 weeks to realize this just wasn't for me. It wasn't the type of partners I wanted to be in business with at the time. So exciting opportunity, but I just knew this was not going to be the right fit. So literally weeks after that, I get out of a meeting at a friend's office not far from here in Roseville area. And
Was the startup a salon too?
no, startup wasn't a salon. It was almost like a Groupon meets Costco sort of concept, where it was discount site, but kind of membership sort of thing, where you had to be a member of it and pay like a monthly fee
Okay.
in order to be a part of it, right? So what it did was you got companies who weren't necessarily willing to work on a Groupon type, discount type platform to be more involved in it, where they wouldn't put their services on a Living Social or a Groupon at the time. So,
Right.
So honestly, liked the concept, just it wasn't going to work out long term. So weeks later, I ended up getting out of a meeting, and my father-in-law at the time, I had more missed calls and text messages from him than I had ever had. And so I'm going, okay, what's going on? It was just, hey, need to talk, opportunity. And he knew that I was looking for something, right? And that I was looking for something new, something fun, something exciting. Wasn't thinking hair salons at all. So he goes, hey, we need to talk. And I go, okay, what is it? And he goes, he has an insurance brokerage. So he goes, one of my insureds is closing down their business. And basically, if you're interested, it's something we got to make a decision on quickly. So because they just announced to their staff that they were going to shut down. And it wasn't for financial reasons. There was a variety of things kind of behind the scenes that were going on with, the landlords and the lease, and then they had sold the company, but the people who bought it ultimately didn't have the money to even come up with the down payment. So they strung them along for months, and then the lease was expiring, and they just didn't want to commit to another 5 years and were ready to retire. So they said, you know what, we'll just close down the doors. So,
And your father-in-law is the one that alerted you to this, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Father-in-law.
Yep.
And he was in the insurance business, so would he have the commercial insurance?
He had
on
insured this salon for 10 years at the time.
Oh,
Still
okay.
insures it to this day. And so that's how he knew, because he was calling to say, hey, can you introduce me to the new owners so I can, and they're like, well, so deal kind of fell through the table. We just announced to the staff, we're going to shut it down.
Wow.
So,
why do you think, and I want to get back to that story, but I
Yeah.
want to interject this question. Why do you think people would even entertain, let's just shut it down? Like, I don't even
Yeah.
understand. That is so far beyond the pale of comparison, or pale of possibilities for me
Yeah.
to just shut a business down and walk away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Why do you think people do that? Why do they even want to do that?
I don't know, because, the funny thing is, I think that rather than shutting it down, I think my last resort would have been, there was a handful of employees there that have been working there for years, right? Why not, even if you're going to just shut it down, why not give them the business, right? And let them run with it. You had a general manager in there who had been there for 16 years at the time, right? Running the place for 12 of those 16 years. So, I mean, my mindset would be, let's transition this to a few people. We've trained them for years on how to run this business, right? It's kind of turnkey at this point. It's got a clientele. It was financially doing well, right? It had nothing to do with financials from that standpoint. So you would think that would ultimately would have been probably that would have been the route I would have gone if I were ready to retire and not wanting to personally commit to another 5 years on a lease, right? But ultimately, that wasn't the case, which I'm
You're
not
the
gonna
beneficiary
complain
of that
about.
decision. Okay, so back to the story.
Yeah.
So they had a buyer on the line. They were going to sell it to some other person.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you may or may not know, but for whatever reason, it fell through. And then they decided, we're still going to shut it. We're done. We got to be in Cabo next week, so we're out.
Yeah.
Or whatever their story
Yeah,
was. Like,
yeah.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And you found out about it. So that was on what day of the week? Like, do you remember what day of the week it was?
Yeah, so that would have been probably like a Wednesday or midweek sometime.
So midweek you get the call, and then what happened
It was
next?
midweek because I was actually going on a little golf trip in the Pebble Beach area just right after I got that call. So I'm then for 3 days in Pebble Beach playing golf, right? And I have the owner send us 4 years of financial statements, and I'm looking at it going, this is a no-brainer, right? There's risk here because they announced to the staff that they're leaving, and now staff are starting to interview elsewhere, right? So there's some significant risk from that standpoint because a lot of that revenue could be walking away at this point, and I don't know that yet. So I then went from reviewing the financials to literally meeting the owner on the way back from Pebble Beach, in between Pebble Beach and San Francisco, at a Starbucks in Benicia, California, and to sit down and talk to him about it, right? And so this is now 3, 4 days, 5 days after finding out about it, and then literally days later in the salon introducing ourselves to 63 employees.
So you find out, you're in the middle of a golf trip, and you end up meeting the owner on the way back from the golf trip or somewhere in the middle, but then at what point did you make the final decision? Do you remember, I'm doing this?
It was almost, it's funny how things can just work out, right? And you talk about like timing and being in the right place in the right time and all that, right? So I happen to have my CPA golfing with me in Pebble Beach, right?
What are the chances, man?
Yeah, and I'm taking him golfing, right, at this golf course there. And so I have 3 days of golf for him to sit there and review financials, right? So we're going through the 4 years of tax returns, and I mean, he's going, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, there's risk here, but even if you lose some revenue at the end of the day, like the salon was so profitable at this point and doing so well that even if you lost a little bit of it, you're still going to be okay here, right? And if you're profitable and you have chairs to fill, right, it's like you're doing all right and you have room to add people. So it was a no-brainer, honestly. And did I ever think salons? No, but I think for me in life, whether it's a hair salon, a sales organization, whatever it is, I think what I wanted to do was be able to inspire and help people grow, right, personally and professionally. And I think being able to take that sales background, right, into a business where that's not something they would typically think about, right, is, okay, yeah, they want more people in their chair, they want all these things, but how do you get more people in your chair, right? How do you build revenue as an individual hairstylist? That's not something that most hair salon owners or a stylist really think about in that way, right? So when you can take a hairstylist and just sit down and go, okay, here's your numbers, like month over month, right? And okay, great, you want to grow your revenue by X. That's great, but how are we going to get you to X, right? What are you going to do on a weekly basis, monthly basis, between social media posts, all these things. So just sitting down and planning out with a hairstylist is unique to the industry to a degree, right? But that's where I think coming in without any experience in that industry was so beneficial, though, because you could look at it from an outsider's view and not just this way that the industry kind of was for the most part. And I'm not different. I mean, there's salon owners like that too who definitely do that, but most don't. So.
Well, I think that having that outsider's perspective certainly helped, and I would agree with you there. And that's the reason why I encourage people as entrepreneurs to hire coaches.
Yeah.
Because that coach can give an outside perspective to you that you don't have. And you buying this business from outside the industry and sitting down with a hairstylist who's always done it the same way, fantastic as a technician, but probably not really good as a marketer to get more people, or a salesperson to get more people in the chair. So I think that's probably good. But I got a question for you though, Blake. To even be in the position to buy a company like that, how had you accumulated enough capital? Was it through the sales organizations to purchase a company? Now, I also understand that they were about to shut it down. You don't have to reveal any of the money stuff, but they were essentially gonna die. And you walk in and say, I'll take it. So it couldn't have been a ton of money, but how did you get the money to do that? I mean,
so the funny thing about it is because there was risk now, right? Ultimately, if we would have been in the picture 2-3 weeks prior, right, to them announcing to the staff, it's like it would have been a different story as far as the amount of money they were looking for at that time. Because if you're talking about a multiple, right, on net income or something, I mean, you'd have been talking 10 times more than what it ultimately ended up getting it for. And not only that, but it's like the money was mainly paid out of first year's profits too. So it was very little out of pocket. I think there were so many expenses, there was a lot of expenses. You would think walking into a business is kind of turnkey and all that, that it wouldn't have been a whole lot, but I mean, it's a 9,000 square foot salon next door to Dolce & Gabbana, right? So it's not, the rent's a lot, so when you're adding up 2 months of rent, it's a lot, and all the other things that come along with it. So I think that there wasn't as much as you would think walking into a business that had been established at that point for 22 years in downtown San Francisco.
But it has your name now. Is that the name it was before by coincidence, or did you change the name?
No, so the name was Joseph Koza Salon. So the well-known salon, it was one of the 2 salons kind of ranked by leading salons of the world out of San Francisco, a top 100 salon, Kerastase salon worldwide, biggest salon in the city. And so it was well-known, well-established. It was just 2 guys ready to retire. So Joseph Koza actually stayed on up until COVID hit, working part-time. And the deal was 3 years to be able to use the Joseph Koza Salon brand. And then it had to rebrand or talk about a new deal at that point. But I ultimately chose to rebrand it, mainly for one reason, that while the salon, well-established, people know the brand became a little outdated too, where they hadn't, marketing to a younger generation and the next generation of clients wasn't necessarily happening for all those years, for the last 5-10 years, right? And so the staff had gotten older, the clientele had gotten older, and the mindset of hairstylists around the city was that it was an older salon. It was the who's who of San Francisco. You can't afford to go there, and it's older people, right? And so ultimately I chose that part of a rebrand that would be good for the location would be just changing the name, which would be the 3rd name in that location since 1985.
And the name is?
Blake Charles Salon now.
And where did that name come from?
So my name is Blake Charles McCall. So
it is your first and middle name, huh?
Yeah, so it's my first and middle name, and I always liked the ring of my name for whatever reason. So it really came about. I ended up taking over a location, a salon that was was going out of business in Granite Bay. And this is where I'm from. Granite Bay was kind of home for me, the region. And I thought, you know what? I have a goal of having a salon in a few different cities across the country. Really taking more of the Thomas Keller model. He's in the restaurant world, right? The French Laundry and Bashan and these different places. And he's in mainly Napa, San Francisco, LA, and New York at the time. And I was like, it's really the concept I wanted for a salon. I just wanted to be high-end luxury salon in a few different markets. And then home for me, right, is Sacramento and Granite Bay and that whole region. So had an opportunity to take over a salon. December 1st of 2019, I took over a salon that was losing $10,000 a month and knew quickly that I could eat away at a lot of that just based off of high expenses that I knew I'd be able to cut down by renegotiating contracts between the lease and even little things. I mean, I know telecommunications, right? So, and even just simple things like phone and internet contracts. I knew they were overpaying there, and they were undercharging rent onto the stylists who were renting chairs. It's like, this is a no-brainer, right? And this is the mindset of all the some of these salon owners out there where it's like just trying to fill seats, but you're charging less than, there's not a salon within 3 miles of here charging less than that. And you're like $200-$300 less a month than the next. Where are they going to go even if you raise it $300, right? So I looked at the market, figured out what people were charging in the area, went, and it's not about raising people's rents and just wanting to get out of every penny out of a stylist, but it's about building a business that will be here long term and providing a location for these stylists to thrive in, right?
Were you able to take the Granite Bay location that was losing money? Has that turned for you? I know you did it at a terrible time. You didn't know it was a terrible time, but you did it at a terrible time. Has that been able to flip for you, or still kind of?
So there was a lot of work that needed to be done in the salon. So I literally had a grand opening party the last week of February of 2020.
Wow, in California.
Where we're the first to close and like the last to reopen, right? So I mean, grand opening party, February 2020. But somehow in February, I managed to, within 3 months, go from the salon losing $10,000 a month to getting pretty close to that break-even point. And then COVID hits, right? And then we're shut down. In the Sacramento area, there was about a month and a half, June to mid-July, where we were open before they kind of shut us down again. Where San Francisco, we were just shut down until October, basically, end of September, from March until then, right? So no revenue coming in except for some color kits we were doing on the side to bring in some revenue. But so I actually, in May of 2021, had my first profitable month in Granite Bay, which to me, it's like, I looked at Granite Bay as like, I'm excited for this, it's home, it's all this, but I was like, this is a challenge that I like, right? I didn't like COVID or any of that, but it was something where I felt like if I can make it out of COVID from a salon that I took over in December of 2019, grand opening February of 2020, and somehow make it through all this, I looked at it as a challenge. It was kind of exciting at the same time.
Wow.
Right?
So what was it like? I mean, I don't want to get political, but what was it like dealing with the government telling you cannot be open?
It's tough. I mean, in one hand, I think, especially in March, April, May, COVID was this unknown, right? Where it's like we didn't know what to expect. I think looking back on it now, hair salons can do this safely. I mean, between both salons, I've seen well over 10,000 clients since we shut down in March of 2020, right? And that limited time we've been open since February of this year up until now. And last year, it's like, when I ran a report on clients just a couple months ago, we were at 9,800 clients. So we're well above 10,000 clients and not one known transmission from stylist to client or client to stylist. We come from an industry where hairstylists are trained on safety, right? And sanitation. That's what beauty school is. The majority of it is safety and sanitation, right? So there's very few industries that could operate more safely and provide a kind of cleaner environment than what we do. And I mean, we've done everything we can. And again, I think the proof is in the pudding here, where hair salons don't need to shut down. It doesn't add to COVID. It was tough. I mean, especially for how long here in California and San Francisco. It was like one more layer on top of that. So
do you have your eyes set on another place or location yet, or is it too early?
I would. So it's a little too early. I mean, there's still some recovering. I mean, in San Francisco, I'm still down 30% in revenue from where we were pre-COVID, just due to, people aren't jumping back into the salons when they're working from home now, right? A lot of the tech companies are still remote or limited for how many people they've brought back at this point. So there's less need for people to be getting their hair done because they're not in front of people as much. They're not going out as much. They're not going to all the events in San Francisco and the sporting events and all that. So that all takes a toll on people coming in less times, which is equated in some people moving out of the city or whatever. I think the biggest reason why we're 30% down right now in revenue is because we were the last city to open. And
this fly, for those of you not watching this, we said there was a fly in this room, and sure enough, before it's over, it's going to land on one of us, and it is now circling Blake.
This is our Mike Pence moment right here. But when you talk about, we were a destination salon. I mean, people came from all over the Bay Area, even from Sacramento to San Francisco to get their hair done. We had clients, literally one client from Dubai, from Paris, Northwest, some people coming from LA, where they would fly in just to get their hair done, right? And when you talk about we're the first to close and the last to reopen, that means they had the opportunity to start going to other salons that were open before we could reopen, right? Closer to home, all that. So we definitely lost some clients for that reason as well, which was, I think, my biggest frustration with the city of San Francisco. And just because, surrounding cities are open. and able to do hair. And here we are in a building that we can't, and in a city where we can't do hair. And that was frustrating, knowing that, you know, our clients are starting to see other hair salons, right? And so some of them start trickling back over time, because our experiences, I've traveled salons all over the country, and the experience we provide is as good as any, if not the best.
Well, you know, it's hard enough as an entrepreneur to be successful without arbitrary forces on the outside, you know, telling you what you can and can't do, that have zero basis in facts or figures. I mean, I love what you said, because I know that, you know, I go to my barber every 2 weeks, and and I've watched what happened through. And I'm in the Nashville area, which is certainly. There was a shutdown there too, certainly not as long as California or San Francisco specifically, but I watched what happened to them. But I also know that like what you said, it's so clean. Like everything, like the little blue stuff they put the combs in, I don't know what that stuff's called, but
barbicide.
Barbicide. Everything is done so meticulous. It's hard enough to be successful without the government preventing you from success. But speaking of success, because this show is called The Root of All Success,